Welcome to the Black Box of Media, brought to you by Ultimate Edge Communications. I'm your host, Aleisha McCall, and this is episode 6. This is the podcast that lifts the lid on hidden strategies behind high-performance media advertising. If you've ever wondered why some campaigns drive incredible results and others fall flat, this is where we break it all down. In each episode, I sit down with marketing experts, media buyers, and brand leaders to uncover the tactics, insights, and real-world case studies that drive results. No fluff, no jargon, just actionable advice to help you cut through the noise and make media work harder for your business. So if you're a CMO, a marketing manager, or a business owner looking for that edge, this is your backstage pass to results-driven marketing. So let's unlock the black box of media and change the way you think about media advertising. Now, today we are joined by a marketing powerhouse, Kim McConnie, who is currently Group Executive Marketing Lead at Tourism and Events Queensland. Kim McConnie is one of Australia's most dynamic marketing leaders, currently leading the charge as Group Executive Marketing at Tourism and Events Queensland with a career spanning iconic global brands like PepsiCo and Cricket Australia. Kim brings a bold, data-backed and emotionally intelligent approach to driving growth in complex and high-stakes environments. She's definitely had plenty of experience in that space. She's known for crafting strategies that not only spark imagination, but deliver commercial outcomes, making her the perfect guest to unpack what really drives tourism demand in 2025 and beyond. And more importantly, the strategies and the tactics that actually drive our performance when it comes to running high-stake campaigns. So this episode explores strategies powering destination marketing success in 25 and beyond, with the tourism sector more competitive and more complex than ever before. It's going to be packed with critical decisions, evolving tools, and creative thinking that's really needed to turn attention into action and browsers into bookers. So let's get into it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. It's going to be so exciting.
Look, I think we're going to have a lot of fun. We've got a lot to unpack, and we're really just keen to tap into your, experience and expertise, not just in the tourism sector, but, bringing all of that previous thinking into such a unique and such an exciting environment like, working with Tourism Queensland.
Thank you.
Unreal. So look, I know we've got tons to get through, so I'm going to jump straight in, and I want to get into the nitty gritty straight up, as you'd expect. And I know you're up for it, Kim. So we'll make the most of it. So when you look at sort of, the Australian landscape with 90%, and I couldn't believe these numbers, 90% of Australians considering a holiday at any given time, how do you even approach that and segment that to cut through to actually reach the intenders that you want to target?
It's a great question. And it really does help the fact that, legally everyone has to take annual leave, right? So I've never really worked in a category where everyone has to at some point, buy your product in essence. So what we look at is then break it down to really customer segmentation. And everyone talks a lot about consumer segmentation, but I find within tourism, it is really important because out of that 90%, how many people are looking for a holiday within the next, 12 months, 6 months, 3 months? And it really is that time frame that drives a lot of our decision making. And as well as the fact that we overlay, what is it that they're looking for? Are they looking for an event goer? Are they someone who travels because of specific events? Are they looking for experiences? And is that what is motivating them?
And
So
how do you, Kim, when you're going through that
motivation.
thinking, because you're right, there's so many different aspects, just the sheer large, and I get even with bigger budgets, you've got to have that sort of strategic focus of how do I take that 90% and turn that into the 20 or 30% that are actually going to go, in the next sort of 2 to 3 months. How, when you're looking at that behavioral breakdown and segmentation breakdown, what are the kind of buckets that you see really are sort of driving your indicators, those leading indicators to say, actually, that's our group we've got to go after, or that's they're the people that we need to focus on?
And I think really the backbone of that is data. We do a lot of our own tracking and data analytics to really understand what are the trigger points. That's what we're always looking for. What are those drivers of consideration? Because I might have my wish list for a holiday, but there are certain specific things that drive consideration. And just to give you an example, late last year we launched Bluey's World, where here in
Brilliant.
Brisbane we recreated Bluey's house. And we knew that by doing that, that was going to be a trigger, because if you were a Bluey fan, or even if you were interested in Bluey, that would be something that would help trigger you to take a holiday. So we're constantly looking at what are those experiences that will, in order to make someone go, okay, not only am I going to choose Queensland, but I'm going to choose Queensland now.
Yeah, it's that, and that's the thing. It's that whole, I saw something, I felt something, but I don't know what that is. And then it's that subsequent communications where they start to go, oh, hang on, that's what it is. And that was, I mean, Bluey was just brilliant. Like, I can still go back and watch that TVC and just be like, this is absolute gold. But you're right. Like, and even speaking from a parent's point of view, obviously taking the family on a holiday, you put Bluey in front of me and I'm there, right? Along with every other parent in the country, because we all have just been, our minds have been trained to think in that way. And the minute you see it, you think joy, because you're thinking about your kids that are watching that, watching that experience or being elated by, something related to Bluey. But what I love about that point is, and I think sometimes marketers can underestimate that, is the value of creating that emotional connection. I know we're bouncing around a bit, but the value of that emotional connection up front, to be, I saw something, I felt something, I'm not sure what it is, to then sort of be later on in the funnel retargeted and have the secondary or tertiary messages that kind of bring that all full circle. So when you were thinking about this, Bluey campaign, can you kind of give us some sort of inside context of how that came to life? And more importantly, how did you take that from sort of that big awareness-based play to then the execution of the consideration, the intention to actually get people to, as a result, consider taking a holiday?
And really it comes down to the media mix to some extent, because I think if you, and I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but it is about the balance between how you use your media mix to some extent, because obviously what we know is Bluey was globally a pop culture phenomenon. Everyone became a Bluey fan. So we knew that we had an existing fan base, but that is no longer enough, right? We know that. That's no longer enough that you can just rely on the fact that if you build it, they will come. I wish it was that easy.
Me too.
You got to build it. But then
It's like,
what
why
you
are they not here? Why are they not here? I built it. Like, why are they not here?
do I have to do anything else? Don't I just build it?
It should be that easy.
So we knew that we had the first step, but we knew we were pretty far away from it. And what we needed to do was firstly leverage digital, because this wasn't just about appealing to Australians, it was global. So we leveraged digital to make sure that we were building that awareness and global reach. Meta, Google, YouTube. What we did know, though, is that really a lot of the money in the bank was going to be delivered firstly by Australians. So we had
Those are like the closest point to consider like conversion, right? It's like if we can get the Aussies first, then we can reach out knowing that there'll be a longer lead time for those, the US, for example, and so on.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we, and that's where we then focus. We had the global layer, we had, awareness and social doing that, but we knew the money in the bank was going to come from Queenslanders and also Australians as well. So
And how were you able to tangibilize that success from such a huge global campaign like that? How were you, and also knowing that you don't necessarily see you're not the end that goes, okay, got the booking. Like if you look at the e-commerce experience and it's like impression, click, a product view, add to cart, convert, you don't have that because you're not, in any cases, you're the referrer to make sure that they book at all of these, beautiful Queensland locations. How did you sort of look at, and it's a great example because it was such a big campaign. How did you get that sort of confidence around the commercial outputs as a result of something like that?
That is the $1 million question ultimately. And we spent a lot of time on that. And I think there's twofold there. Because it was an experience, we do get postcode data from everyone who visits there. So, it's as simple as that. We do rely on that. Our other objective, though, with Bluey was not just to build an amazing experience that had people come to it. That was part of it. But to make sure they were experiencing Brisbane and Southeast Queensland, because a large part of our audience was those people from interstate, New South Wales, Victoria, SA, WA. So yes, come to Bluey and we've captured your data through the experience, but we also want to make sure that you're staying in hotels, you're going to Tangalooma Island, you're going to the Gold Coast, and that is really hard to track. In fact, we haven't found a way to do that. But what we do is we use things that we can track. And one of the biggest ones is website traffic and also leads to industry. So during that campaign time, were we seeing an increased visitation to Queensland.com? Were we seeing increase to our social? And were people clicking on, what to do and where to visit? And we obviously have a lot of data on our website that was helping us understand, well, actually, during that time, we were getting a lot of increased traffic from Sydney and Melbourne. And it was clicking through to, visitation and experiences on the Gold Coast, on the Sunshine Coast. So we really are cobbling together quite a few areas to give us a dashboard to help us understand, are we able to increase the visitation experience across the state?
And that's interesting, right? Because it's often those leading indicators that you can really draw confidence from to go, okay, well, hang on, our traffic's up in this area. Now, to your point, we've got these trigger points. And if we look in the funnel and then we get I call it the quantitative and the qualitative, right? So you want that, you've got that quantitative data that's sitting in your dashboards, it's giving you the numbers, giving you the confidence. But then you also want that qualitative feedback from each of your partners, your hotels, your tourism event destinations, so that you can get that anecdotal feedback loop to go, okay, yes, this has had a direct correlation or an effect on the outcome of this campaign. And I'd imagine that will be continuing to evolve, because your space is probably one of the most complex, just because you don't have full control over that consumer journey, which does, and marketers listening that maybe are in a similar experience. It's about, okay, well, how can we pull together the data that we do have, and how can we visualize that in a way to give us that confidence through the funnel that as a result of this, great campaign, we're now pulling those clicks, that traffic, those lead generated intentions, and then of course, ultimately those bookings. So when we look at the sort of beyond the click, this is a good segue. So tourism often has a much longer decision cycle. So what methods are you using to sort of connect the dots between, early engagement and eventual bookings, knowing that you don't fully own that journey? How can you still measure and influence those outcomes?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think what we see from a tourism point of view, and it's probably the same in other categories, is everyone is always considering. You're always in that consideration funnel. And I think when we look at that funnel, that's what we really use to break it down. Because what we do know is that, we have seasonality playing a massive role as well. So when we look at that consideration funnel, we know that there is times when people are absolutely considering a holiday. And interestingly, what we're seeing from our own data is that is shortening. And I think there's
The
just
decision-making horizon. Yeah,
it is.
wow.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think it's a combination of a few things, right? I think there's just macro factors at play, that there's so much uncertainty at the moment that I don't know, from weather, from cost of living, from even a hangover from COVID. I just don't have
I thought you were going to say hangover in general. Okay, that's
the hangover in general.
that's a conversation for a different podcast.
But people just don't have the level of certainty anymore. They're like, I don't know if I have the confidence to book a holiday 6 months out.
Mhm.
Will I have a job in 6 months out? Will I, what will I be doing? Where will I be going?
What
Will
we'll be
there be a
dealing
better
with. It's
deal?
true. I think we see that, and it's a really good point, because I think we actually see that across, a ton of different clients. That something that used to be, maybe a 6-month or a 9-month decision-making cycle being so much more faster because of the reaction. But I also think that comes back to now the pace at which everything's moving. To your point, things are moving so quickly, things are more uncertain than ever, that it does actually, and I think as marketers, we have to appreciate, understand, and adapt and adjust to that, is that actually the people that you are going to be able to pick up in a shorter space of time, probably higher than what it was, pre-COVID, if we use that as a line
Mm.
in the sand.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're seeing is we're always prospecting. We're always out there with a consideration mindset, and a lot of our marketing is always just about building that consideration and being always on. What we then focus on is that, 6 to 8 week window when people are actually looking at, where am I going to book? And that's when they're actually coming down the funnel. And that is the time that we're really looking at pushing out those messages. Absolutely, we're doing tactical campaigns and working with partners like Qantas and Virgin and Expedia. But importantly, we're also looking at those other levers, and events is a massive one for us. Magic Round, we obviously have Magic Round in May in Brisbane. We have food, we have cultural events that are across the state. They are a massive lever for us to really make sure that we're pushing people down that funnel.
And Kim, are those events places in which you can really capitalize on the first party data aspect to start to understand the type of people that are coming through the funnel? Or are they still led for sort of that awareness and consideration play?
No, absolutely. What we start to do is a lot of those events, they're obviously, from a tourism point of view, we're a significant investor in those events. So what we're able to do is really have a look at, what is the conversion metrics that we can use to make sure that we're seeing people go all the way through the journey. Because a lot of those events, if I say, for example, NRL and Magic Round, we're actually pushing our messages out through their channels, which is great, right? So then we're able to track it all the way through and see, okay, those people who've seen tourism messaging, what has the impact been right the way through to them not only buying a Magic Round ticket, but then what other experiences are they doing off the back of that? We have a
Yeah,
booking
right.
site which is integrated into the NRL site. So did they then go onto there? Did they book the Tangaluma trip? Did they book the restaurant experience? Did they go, do the bridge climb as well?
And that also gives you that sort of that profile build, right? It gives you that behavioral build of this is the type of, when we go back to that segmentation piece of, these are the type of events, these are the type of experiences that this audience, this segment is most interested in. So when we're going down into our retargeting messages and so on, let's make sure that these show up, or even leveraging, something like dynamic retargeting on a Facebook platform is let's make sure that these experiences are the ones that show up. If you've got ballet versus NRL, you've got, two two different ends of the continuum. So being able to tap into that and create, more of that, like what we talk about, that personalized experience, I can imagine that's certainly going to help people, one, build the emotion, but also pull them through the funnel with confidence.
Mm. And also, I think pull through the funnel with confidence. In this role, what I found very different is partnerships are so important. Partnerships are important no matter what industry, right? But what we find is the way that we're pulling people down the funnel is quite often through our partnerships. For example, we just did a campaign actually around Bluey with Qantas Group. So we're actually using them and collaborating with them, and they're including our messages through their funnel. And that's often the way that we're ensuring that we actually drive that conversion in a way which is measurable and has a clear ROI.
Yeah, fantastic, because you can get that data back. Like if we talk about that fully integrated feedback loop, now you can really start to tangibilize the value of the marketing dollar, which I think, for CMOs especially who are managing, up to either C-suite or to boards, it's like, okay, well, what is actually, and I was just having this conversation yesterday, it's like, well, what's the value of that marketing dollar? So if we're going to invest $10 million in this, what is the actual overall, sales number that we're going to pull, but also what are the other value-driven assets, value-driven outcomes that we're going to achieve as a result. So I think the more that, we can all start to close that feedback loop, so to speak, and really get that tangible data, then the more we can get out of, the qualitative inputs and so on. So I think it's a great example and a great insight on what everyone is sort of trying to do. Okay, so what we've noticed, and I'm going to change tracks a little bit here, but what we've noticed is obviously this sort of surgence of user-generated content, and it's really come off the back of the trust and branded content now dropping. And so I'd really love to get your perspective, Kim, on what role user-generated content is actually playing in your strategy now. And more importantly, have you got, some examples of where UGC has truly influenced travel behavior, or maybe even some indicators or conversion in the funnel, because it really does seem to be resonating at a higher level. So I'd love to get your thoughts.
I absolutely love this question because it's such a topical one at the moment, because UGC is now one of our most trusted storytelling tools. And in fact,
Wow.
we've just launched a new campaign where UGC is at the centre of it for a very strategic reason. As a state, Queensland really challenges to talk about the breadth and depth of what we offer. We are a state that really, it is a lifetime of holidays in one state. Where else can you go to and you can have, the beach, the rainforest, the outback, all in one place? And it's really challenging for us to tell that in a way which is compelling and credible. And UGC is what we're doing for that, because every single day, our industry, the tourism operators across the state, are putting out UGC content every minute.
It's exploding, right? Yep.
It's exploding. It's
Yep.
exploding. And it's exploding in a way that we will never be able to tell that story as a state tourism body.
And so,
Totally
Kim, does
just
that
done.
enable you to leverage that? So if they're
Mm,
already producing all of that content, then there's just great leverage in that, right? Where you go, right, we'll take that content and we'll put that on a larger platform for you. We'll give you
yep.
access, put that on the platform and promote that to people that would otherwise never see that content.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what we've done. We've just launched our new campaign, That Holiday Feeling, where we've
I gotta,
rewritten.
you might not be able to answer me, but I gotta ask, how did you get that track?
Oh, the Madonna holiday song. It,
Yeah,
it, it was it was perseverance. That's what I say. You just don't take no for an answer and
I
keep.
reckon that would have been an incredible amount of hustle, an incredible amount of skill and strategy to make that happen. So well done. I think you've got a lot of us sitting in our seats here going, wow, that's awesome. Way to go. So, but I won't digress.
That was a great track, but we used the excitement around that track we gave access to the industry. They could use it in a template, and we enabled them to use that template to push out their user generated content. And exactly what you said, what we're doing now is we're aggregating all that. That is
Yep.
the content that we are pushing out on our social channels, both organically and paid. Now it's only been a couple of weeks, but the response to that has been phenomenal because there's moments there that we will never be able to capture. And it is what is convincing people to take a holiday now. It's that moment that you're walking through the Daintree, which is older than the Amazon jungle. And the way that people are experiencing that in the moment with no advertising filter,
Yeah.
that is what is convincing people today. Because as you said, there is limited trust nowadays behind, branded organizations pushing that out.
Yeah.
So what that our role is just how do we take that? How do we aggregate it? And how do we amplify it?
Totally. And that whole authenticity piece just filtering through because when you can I guess pull down those barriers, pull down any of that doubt and just let someone feel like they're in the moment with that person walking in that environment, that is the whole, okay, I felt something's different. And then in those subsequent messages, that's when you start to get the engagement. So I think that's an awesome strategy. And how do you see, if you look at that and you look at the role of user generated content, is that something that you will just continue to evolve and continue to amplify across all of your campaigns? Or do you see it playing a specific role in a specific area of the marketing funnel?
I think both. I think it'll play a specific role in a specific area. I think it'll
Mhm.
be getting bigger. What we see from a tourism point of view is there is a real credibility challenge more and more that we're seeing, right? Like that's not really the room. The restaurant
Yeah.
doesn't really look like that. The beach doesn't look like that. So what we're seeing is a massive take up. And it's not just youth. We're seeing it across all ages where they're actually looking at, Meta and Facebook. We see it on drive holidays that, there's a massive community on drive holidays which are posting and using UGC as their currency for where to stop, where to go, what to
Yeah.
do.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. Okay, that's unreal. So, because that's the feeling I think, and everything that I've been reading and everything that we've been doing across our campaigns is just this surgence of that to really start to now tell a different story, but tap into an audience that just no longer trusts, right? To
Yeah.
actually get that credibility back. So that's awesome. Now, talking about sort of paid social and commerce innovation, there's a lot happening in this space. I tell people all the time, I sort of got to do 5 to 10 hours of reading a week just just to stay across, what's coming. So, what do you think? What excites you about the emerging formats that are coming? Like TikTok Shop and Instagram Live, sales for tourism. And then second to that, sort of, if you were to run an e-commerce event, tomorrow, what would that look like, and how would you measure it? I'm just really keen to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think the e-commerce space is really exciting, and I
Mm.
think the TikTok shop ability and where that goes will be something that is hugely exciting. Travel influencers are massive, right?
Yeah.
Like around the world, we have some big ones here in Australia as well. And these travel influencers, there's the moment that you really capture people and you have the ability then to drive that sale and convert. If I'm there sitting there, in the Whitsundays by the pool and all of a sudden it comes up and I can buy that experience and that holiday. And I'm having a terrible day at work and it's cold. I'm in Melbourne. It's cold and I'm just really miserable. All of a sudden I'm seeing that, and that's what I love about e-commerce and that whole TikTok shop space because
Mhm.
tourism is about selling a dream. It's such an emotive category, which really surprised me when I came in because they're expensive. Holidays are a considered purchase, but the driver of it is so emotional that the ability to leverage something like TikTok or e-commerce space and, that ability to buy now helps us reach not only a domestic audience, but for me, the opportunity is globally. Imagine sitting somewhere, being able to target and someone in New York City in a cost-effective way just has
Correct.
in our reach.
New York winter, come over. Like, check out what we've got going on over here. And I think you've nailed it. Where the instant ability to be able to be in the moment, be feeling something, see something extraordinary that you want to experience, and then be like, bugger it, we're doing it. I've been guilty in the past as well. Right, it's happening because you're in that moment, and it without any distraction. So I have a similar view, is that the brands that can leverage this, and the brands that can leverage the in the moment aspect with all the necessary pre-build up, the awareness that's not going to go. But to be in those instances where you've got that almost scarcity, or you've got, limited availability, or whatever it might be, go back QVC days. That's basically what it is. It's QVC on now Instagram and TikTok, right? So this, Gary Vee talks a ton about this. This is the way of the future. I do think it's important for brands to get themselves educated on this, start to explore what could be possible, and then ask the question, okay, well, if that's the case and we were to do something like this, how would we play that out? How would we roll that out? And how would we, measure success?
Absolutely. And I do think there is that whole pillar of in the moment. But to your point, there's a lot of consideration points within that, and how do you make sure that you're delivering the return on investment? Particularly as I look at it, and as I said, it's about how do I get that global reach.
Correct, and be able to justify the investment that I'm sure they'll charge for it when we get there.
It'll be a bargain.
Correct. That's exactly it. So good segue into attribution and ROI. When, and I guess we've talked about sort of the more complex landscape that you're operating in. Now, why do you think the traditional first and last click model is broken in tourism? And then what new attribution models are you thinking or maybe using that are helping you to just get more accurate, more reliable, performance-driven data?
Look, as we talked about a little bit earlier, like we connect the dots through layered data sources, and CRM tagging with partners as well. So we do have a much more complex approach to it. And then also, as I said, we're sort of dealing with this whole, we're seeing the lead time is shorter and shorter. And we also look a lot at, we rely heavily on our partners as a result. It is an area which I think will continue to evolve. And I think, you sort of talked about it, we talked about it here. It is an attribution nightmare. Like that's even the way that we talk about it, right? And we do not have a simple solve for it. And at times I feel like we're, I'm MacGyver and I'm cobbling together different ways.
It's a good analogy.
To approach it and sort of going, okay, and then supplementing it with things like just, much more traditional, market mix modeling, to help. So I know that's not a great answer, but it's something that I think a lot of people are struggling with is how do you approach it?
And I think it's good for marketers to know, because I think that this is, probably one of the areas, especially when you're in performance-driven businesses, where marketers do lose a lot of sleep. It's like, how can I correctly attribute the work that I'm doing at either a brand or a performance-driven level to actually articulate and tangibilize what that means for the business. Like we've just introduced an omni-channel framework that's really around testing and measuring and tracking to start to really bring together those traditional and digital worlds to go, okay, well, to your point, here are all the data points that we have, but now let's make sure that we not only capitalize on those, but we capture them and we really demonstrate how we're moving them through the funnel towards conversion. And if we are seeing any sticking points in that journey where we're going, okay, hang on a second, someone's just stuck at product. Why are they stuck at product? What's going on? The drop off is disproportionate. Let's now close that gap and be able to, and we close that gap. And in some cases, when you close that gap, you can increase sales by 10, 15, 20, 25% just by making one small change. And so I think that if it's as opposed to running away, it's almost like leaning into it and going, okay, well, to your point, like what data do I have available? How can I leverage my offline, my online? What tools, what platforms can I really optimize? And then, who can give me a structure that I can then rely upon, or a methodology or a framework to go, right, they're coming in at the impression level, and now I've got confidence that they are in fact coming out at the conversion stage. Because even now with what's happening with, AI starting to play a role, and, cookies, and, we could go on with all of the challenges. I think that we can't let the challenges get the better of us. We have to go, okay, well, if that's the case, what do we now need to do to elevate that, to get that visibility so we can draw confidence, in what we're doing? And I had some great conversations in season 1 with a few marketers just around those moments where you have to kind of trust your gut. You go, okay, well, I've got all the data in front of me. Now I've got to trust my gut and go with it. And I mean, I've seen you in action, yes, I've got the data making that happen and going, right, we're going to run with this because I know it's going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then being prepared and being in an organization that is quite happy with mistakes too. But I think to your point, what I also find is I have a great team here who are just naturally curious around that. And I do think having that commercial mindset with your marketers, where they actually see a lot of those challenges as just opportunities to be more curious. And I think, as you said, it is testing and learning, because that's part of what helps you recalibrate.
100%. No, I think, and when you've got that natural curiosity, that's, that can be game changing in a lot of respects, because it just creates the momentum. Now, final question for you, Kim, which is always a challenging one, is this conversation around sustainability, and it really being no longer a nice to have. How is this influencing destination choice today? And how do you even start by integrating sustainability messaging without overwhelming or distracting from the brand promise of, hey, come to Australia?
Look, this is a great question, because it's so topical at the moment. Because sustainability, at least in travel, isn't just a trend, right? This is a decision driver for many travellers. And it's one where we are seeing some huge success here in Queensland. Like Queensland tourism operators like Lady Elliot Island Eco Resort. We have an amazing tour product in Aquascene on Magnetic Island as well, who are, an eco operator. These are people who their business is the philosophy of how do they build a sustainable product, and what does that mean? The Great Barrier Reef, we launched a campaign late last year, which was Faces of the Reef. And really, this was great. This was how the industry and tourism operators are building a sustainable reef experience, and what are they doing to make sure that the reef lives way beyond us. And it's just fascinating, because what we're seeing is that, overall, Australia globally is expected to do really well, right? We are not getting points for just doing what is expected.
So it's not just, hey, we showed up. It's like, no, you actually have to demonstrate to me what you're doing in this space to create value.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the Great Barrier Reef, there's a whole initiative around, building coral, like replanting coral. And we actually have operators who take tourists with them to do that, and they love it, because they want to make sure that not only are they seeing the reef, but they're leaving the reef better off. And that's probably the shift that we've done, just using Great Barrier Reef as an example. Absolutely, there's a level of sustainability that we need to do, but it's not about that. It's about what are we doing as a tourism industry to make sure that we are leaving the reef in a better position. How are we replanting coral? What else are we doing to make sure that we've, one of our operators has just launched, solar powered boats on there as well. So it's not about diesel. That is what we are doing as an industry to make a difference, and that is what is driving decision and making people want to come to Australia and visit Queensland Great Barrier Reef rather than going somewhere else. So it's the difference that we're focused on.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And I think to give people, especially internationally, and actually also living in Australia, the ability to have an impact, to sort of make their mark. I think there's definitely, a lot of value in that, so that yes, you come and have a great holiday, but you also leave your little, or in some cases your big mark on that space, knowing that you've done something towards the sustainability of it, especially when we're talking about things like Great Barrier Reef and so on. So Kim, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for just being so open and sharing your wisdom and sharing these strategies to help marketers get the very best results. I know, our audience audience of marketers and media pros. They'll walk away with this with some new ideas, new appreciation, I think, of the complexity of what you're dealing with. And I'm sure the other brands out there that are dealing with similar complexities will definitely appreciate this insight. And then just really understanding tourism in general and how it's playing such a huge role, and also the decision-making process to get there. So just, massive thanks to you, Kim, for joining us today.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I loved it. Very fun.
Unreal. Now, before we wrap up, where can people follow or learn more about, Tourism and Events Queensland and also follow yourself?
Queensland.com. Check us out on Queensland.com, and most importantly, start planning that holiday to Queensland.
That's right. I'm going to log off now and start exploring what I've got on offer, because you've got me now thinking, you've got me fully in holiday mode. So awesome, Kim. Thank you so much. Now, if you've got value from this episode, I want you to hit subscribe. The Black Box of Media is all about unlocking those strategies to drive high performance media advertising. So let's keep the conversation going. If today's episode sparked new ideas or challenged the way you think about media, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a message on LinkedIn and share your biggest takeaway. Remember, you can listen and watch on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube for future episodes packed with actionable strategies like this one. So until next time, keep pushing boundaries, keep testing, and most importantly, keep making media work harder for you. I'll see you in the next episode.